Welcome back, lovely listeners. Today's video is The Oddity of Flesh by WeirdBryceGuy. WeirdBryceGuy wrote the Have You Touched Mine series, as well as the story for Doxology, so you know you're always in for a good thing whenever I say his name. And yeah, I just think that he's a good author. I like to read his stuff, so here we go. This is The Oddity of Flesh by WeirdBryceGuy. Enjoy. My parents died together in a plane crash when I was a kid. I was raised by my Aunt Afra and my Uncle Eddie, who lived not far from us and who had absolutely no issue with raising me alongside their own son, Caleb, who was equally welcoming in my impromptu adoption. From the age of 6 to 18, they watched after me and loved me as if I was their own natural child. Once I graduated high school, I went to college, excelled in my studies, and eventually returned to my hometown where I lived in the house of my birth parents, now mine to own. My aunt and uncle, with whom I had kept in touch, still lived nearby, and I visited them as often as I could. In my absence, they had had another child, also a boy, and named him Andrew. Caleb had apparently been something of a failure. I suspected drug addiction, considering his father's old habits, and had exiled himself not only from the home, but from society in general, leaving no clue as to his whereabouts or general path in life. While Uncle Eddie's drug usage hadn't been a problem during my childhood, it had been an addiction that almost consumed him years before. And I guess Caleb had in some way inherited the susceptibility to vice. I never said it, but assumed that Andrew's birth was intentionally or subconsciously meant as a chance to try again. That my aunt and uncle had blamed themselves for Caleb's departure and wanted to prove to themselves that they could be good parents to children of their own conception. Andrew was 4 by the time I returned to my hometown, and although we never met, he referred to me as Big Brother, presumably due to how his parents had referred to me. A thing which may strike you as odd, but which is understandable considering the circumstances, was that I found no pictures of Caleb within their home, but plenty of myself. In fact, during what I guess you could call a search born of eerie curiosity, I found nothing which would even suggest the existence of their firstborn child. It was as if Caleb had been stricken not just from their lives, but from their memory. Considering how it could have made them uncomfortable, I did not mention this, and accepted the moniker of brother from little Andrew, who also seemed to not have any knowledge regarding his biological brother. My aunt and uncle seemed as normal as ever, although Eddie did occasionally exhibit small and infrequent moods of melancholy, although these were quickly overcome within the same visit. Normally, he would leave the room for a moment, presumably to compose himself, and then rejoin his family, his good mood restored. I didn't question those brief dips into depression. I knew their source was related to their firstborn child and knew what it was like to lose a family member. I thought he was handling the situation fairly well. Months passed, and my attention was drawn more and more to my work, and I was unable to spend as much time with my only remaining family as I would have liked. Eventually, my visits dwindled to once every few weeks, and then several months went by without contact or communication. The object of my professional captivation was finally removed. That is to say, I completed the task which had so totally absorbed my focus, and I decided to pay an unannounced visit to my aunt, uncle, and cousin. The lapse in family time wasn't the only example of my inattention. I hadn't checked my mail in about a week, and had quite the bounty waiting for me when I first left my home to head down the street to the house of my aunt and uncle. I sorted through the bundle quickly, planning to toss the whole thing in my car and revisit the items later, but saw among the envelopes letters from the very people I was just planning to visit. It was handwritten and penned in my uncle's usual style. It read, "For so long, the entire existence of our species, in fact, we have completely accepted our skin's presence, tone, even its shades, and tension as normal. Right, as far as we care to examine. We have not questioned how the skin came to be placed around the body seamlessly, save for orifices, and we have not once collectively asked ourselves what purpose it actually serves in the betterment or even maintenance of life. Tell me, when was the last time you actually looked upon your skin as something worthwhile? When have you ever, when gazing into the mirror, thought that the material which bundles your bones looked natural in the true sense of the word? When a man grows hot, he may remove clothing, but he cannot, without harming himself severely, remove the skin of his body, that ever-clinging dermis baselessly believed to be necessary for the persistence of human life. When the temperature drops and the chill creeps through the air, does it not easily bypass that first line of defense and stiffen the joints? If a man should be the target of violence, and the introduction of a bullet or blade into his body is imminent, would the skin not part as if to happily welcome the foreign object? What purpose does the skin serve? If it cannot protect us from the extreme elements nor harden itself to withstand the impact of laceration or harmful agent, I propose that the skin is an inhibitor of both physical freedom and beauty. That beneath its covering lies an entire range of human motion and flexibility, and a muse so gorgeous as to approach divine beauty. The subdermal layers, the muscles, the organs, and the bones, which openly showcased can inspire the most rudimentary of artists to paint pieces of masterful quality, can evoke feelings and give impressions so powerful that the poet and prosaist would be compelled, almost supernaturally, to write page after page describing the structures and forms. The skin, I posit, serves no purpose beyond to stifle and smother, and we should all together set out to rid ourselves and each other of its dreadful suppression. I will be the first, and hopefully upon reading this letter, you will see sense in my words, and in turn liberate your true self. I will implore my wife to do the same, and as any good parent would, perform the excision of that terrible exterior for our boy, your cousin, Andrew. He is young, and I do not think he'll have the resilience to withstand the pain of doing it himself. Pain, I remind you, brought only to us by the pathetic sensitivity of that damnable prison with which we have been wrongfully born. May the next time we see each other be as we truly are, unburdened and free. Your Uncle Eddie. I had passed several houses by the time I came to the conscious realization that I had started running. It wasn't until I was at the front door of their house that I really thought to prepare myself for what may lie inside, namely, the butchered forms of my aunt and my cousin, and perhaps even that of my apparently deranged uncle. I had nothing in the way of weapons, although I doubted my uncle, a squat, ungainly man, could put up much of a fight, especially if he had mutilated himself in the way he desired. Still, I had heard of people possessing almost superhuman extensive strength during fits of mania and psychotic episodes, so I made a quick detour to the garage, thankfully open, and retrieved a hammer left on the wooden shelf, between a can of gas and some empty picture frames. Curiously, a barrel held shredded scraps of photos, although the subjects were indiscernible in their current state. A liquid, obviously gasoline, had been poured into the barrel, dousing the photos in preparation of burning. Thinking it odd, but circumstantially irrelevant, I went back to the front door, hammer in my belt, and knocked. To my surprise, it was immediately acknowledged, and I was beckoned to enter by the voice of my aunt. Shaken, but relieved, I entered the home. The condition of the house was normal, and adhered to their usual standards of decoration. There were no overturned chairs, handprints of blood, or trails leading to locked doors. Again, relief came to me, and I called out to them, and was responded to immediately, directed to the living room. I walked there, removing the hammer from my waistband, and placing it on the table within the foyer, thinking it no longer needed. My mouth started watering before my nose scented the food, and both senses anticipated the meal agreeably. I rounded the corner of the hall, coming into the living room. To my left was the kitchen, where I saw my aunt facing the stove, dressed in an apron, and moving her hands busily across the surface. My attention was drawn from her by the voice of my uncle, apparently seated on a couch just out of view. I stepped closer to the living room, and saw him for the first time in months. You must forgive me if my description of the sight is inadequate or insufficient for the proper mental visualization. I looked only for a few seconds, before sprinting from the room and ending up back in the garage. I saw there on the couch the image of my uncle, although this familiar image had been drastically reduced. lessened considerably, so that he appeared much flatter than I'd ever seen him. He sat comfortably, one leg thrown over the other, one arm in his lap, and the other holding a TV remote. He turned to me when I entered, and stood up in joy at seeing his nephew. Despite his condition, he stood upright as if everything was fine. He called my aunt into the room, who entered carrying a tray on which sat chunks of heated meat. She explained that I was just in time for dinner, and that she had heated up some leftovers. Simultaneously with this explanation was the entrance of my cousin Andrew from the glass sliding door which led to the backyard, who was alike in appearance to his mother and father. A fourth member entered from the bathroom down the hall, and I recognized the general, though aged and of course altered, appearance of my cousin Caleb. They all stood together, smiling, looking like a happy family. My uncle spoke. "Oh, Jack, I'm so happy you're here. You must have read my letter, but don't look so sorry. I'm thrilled you haven't undergone the original transformation I suggested. No, that would have been all wrong. You see, I had been entirely, utterly mistaken in my belief that the flesh was restrictive or inimical. My dear boy Caleb returned from his adventures across the world and has opened my eyes and shown me the error of my initial belief. The truth of the matter, the real path to human freedom, is not to remove our skin, but to unburden ourselves of the stuff beneath. It's the organs, the skeleton, the muscles and sinew, and all the gunk and guts that weigh us down. They limit our movement, anchor us pitifully, but without them, oh wow, I haven't felt this good well, ever. I feel alive, Jacko, truly, finally alive. The thing which had been, which apparently still was, my dear Uncle Eddie, danced about the room. The figure of nothing but skin, hollow-bodied, leapt and kicked merrily. The things beside it, equally empty, danced alongside him, smiling toothless and tongueless smiles and laughing with air born of absent lungs. The things wearing clothes but having within themselves nothing danced before me in a sight so absurd as to be maddening, terrifying, gruesome, not so much in appearance, but in the impossibility of that appearance. The tray of food fell to the floor, food which was not really food, but the cooked innards that they had taken from themselves, and which would again, somehow, be introduced within the skin, but in a wrong way, in a way totally unbefitting of their natural purpose and construction. As I've mentioned, I fled from the room, ending up in the garage. In my flight, I toppled the barrel which held the pictures soaked in gasoline, spilling everything out. I fell as well, landing on the whole sopping heap. As I recovered, slipping here and there, I stirred loose a few fragments which had not been destroyed as the other scraps. In these I could make out subjects of the photos. Most were of my eldest cousin, Caleb, although a few were of myself. On all the pictures of Caleb were the words "ugly," written many times in varying sizes. On mine, the sentence, "Look at him, hideous," was written in every direction. If the hatred in someone's heart could be detected within their writing, then the author's antipathy for me was clear as day. The sound of approaching footsteps, incomprehensible considering the lack of bones and muscle within those feet, cut short my observation. I got up, and before I commanded my hands to do so, I was grabbing the canister of gas and spilling its contents around the garage. I kicked the overturned barrel toward the inner garage, spreading the saturated pictures in that direction. I scrambled around the garage until I found a grill lighter and then duct tape. With motion so fast as to nearly be invisible, I pressed the trigger and taped it down, then threw the lighter at the door just as it opened. The lighter collided with a flat plane of flesh behind which a stomach no longer existed, and then fell to the floor. My uncle made an oof sound, paradoxically, as if breath had been forced from lungs he didn't have. The lighter landed on the pile of gas-dampened pictures which caught fire. Within an instant, the fire spread to the puddles and streaks of gas throughout the room, and a great blaze started up. I had retreated to the driveway just as it did so, and barely managed to avoid being consumed by the flames. The house went up not long after that. No one exited it. The Steinman family, it would seem, had perished together. I walked home, autonomously motioned, my mind temporarily deactivated by shock. I entered my home and sat at my kitchen table for a while, unthinking, until a sudden thought compelled me to rise and leave the house again. I returned to full conscious awareness as my hand grasped the pile of mail I had thrown into my car earlier in the day. In the distance, the sirens of emergency vehicles blared, and I was disappointed to find that the remastered version of a dystopian sci-fi video game I had been anticipating still hadn't come. So the ending was a bit humorous, I'm not gonna lie. The fact that his mind went to the dystopian sci-fi video game being remastered not having arrived was a bit strange, but Bryce does a good job writing these stories. That was one of the weirdest and kind of one of the creepiest stories I've ever read. Just the mental imagery of a person with nothing underneath their flesh. It just puts weird images in your head. Thank you, Bryce, for letting me read this story. If you guys enjoyed it, please do hit that thumbs up button. And please do also hit that subscribe button as well as the bell icon to let me know that you want more content like this. And if you feel so inclined, leave me a comment. Let me know how you're doing. But lastly, down in the description, you'll find links to this story as well as links to my subreddit, Twitter, Facebook, and a page where you can submit a story to me if you have something you want me to read for my channel. Please take advantage of it. That all said, I hope you all have a fantastic day, a fantastic week. I will see you all in the next video, but until then, my friends, I hope that you sleep well and leave your skin on.